Hey guys, what's going on? It's Dan, and I am joined by Chad again, and we are going to be doing our Week 1 PDPL recaps. How you doing, Chad?
I'm doing well. How about you, Dan?
Doing pretty well. So we had a pretty exciting Week 1, so we're just going to quickly go through all of the matches, talk about the ones where we were able to watch the videos of them, and yeah, we'll just go through this recap, and I hope everyone enjoys this type of content. So first off, me versus Depes. Neither of us have posted the videos yet. Mine should go up later this week. I'm just a little behind on my videos overall right now. But I can tell you a little bit about this match. Game 1, I played pretty well. I ended up winning a close one. I learned that his Grand Bull outspeeds my Executor Alola, which was a little unfortunate. But we got out a close one because we led the Electivire. We were able to do some redirection stuff to stop the Colossal from going off, and played pretty well from there. We also learned that it was Life Orb and not Weakness Policy. Game 2, I pivoted to a Trick Room mode with the, I pivoted, I should say, to the anti-Trick Room mode with the Alolan Executor. He got his Trick Room up, but I was able to set up some Calm Minds, was playing really well. And then I got into an end game where I win because under Trick Room, I know that the Grand Bull outsped me outside of Trick Room. I just had it with a Giga Drain and win. Then I learned it was a speed tie, lost the speed tie, and we went to game 3. And then game 3, I committed pretty hard into the Colossal early because he was going to set it up. I led the Chien-Pao and the Azumarill, and I went Ice Spinner plus Liquidation because it was Terra Grass. He didn't Terra it. He brought my Chien-Pao down to Sash with a Heat Wave. I ended up killing the Colossal, but I had to play too safely around the Aqua Jet for the rest of the game from the Clotzer. And he just ended up outplaying me a little bit in the end of the game to win game 3. So no video there, but hopefully mine will go up pretty soon. It was a decent match overall. The Executor Alola was probably my best Pokemon, which was pretty cool to watch. Next one we don't have a video of is Joshi versus Mario. Mario, of course, not running Protect, which is pretty standard, but multiple copies of Helping Hand. And I'm very curious if this video ever comes out, because I am curious to see if he was able to try and get that Spectre set up. I know he ended up losing that match. The Iron Hands Dragapult team does just look like it's got a pretty decent matchup into him overall with what he brought. And then the last match we don't have a video of was Hunter versus Ollie, which was the Ursaluna Mirror. Yeah, I just think that the normal Ursaluna probably has a decent matchup into Blood Moon, and I trust the speed control options on Hunter more, so I imagine this was a close-ish match with a heavy Trick Room commitment from Ollie, but Reuniclus seems like it would do pretty decently in there, but again, no video there. But
Side note on that one, I actually did not know that Ampharos got Meteor Beam, so that's kind of cool.
yeah, Power of Meteor Beam Ampharos is very cool, which is, again, why I'm using pastes instead of just pictures of the Pokemon this season, so we can go over it a little bit. But first match we do have a video of, I will let you do the breakdown of since I just talked about the three we don't, which was M-Boss versus Ollie.
Versus Otto, yeah.
Yeah.
So Otto brought some really cool stuff. He ended up bringing kind of the manual Psychic Terrain with Meowstic, who is the only Mon that has Prankster Psychic Terrain, I think. Puffkey might also get it too, but don't quote me on that. But he in game 1 he set up the Psychic Terrain with Meowstic. I think it was against like Regieleki and Excalibur or something like that in game 1, and just absolutely blasted through M-Boss's team with Delphox and Meowstic. They both just clicked a whole lot of expanding force. You would think that Meowstic wouldn't really love having Prankster moves after it sets up the Psychic Terrain, but it didn't even really need it because expanding force from itself was doing plenty of damage to complement the Delphox. So it was really cool. But in game 2, M-Boss had a really great adaptation, bringing the Primarina with the Choice Scarf. Otto went for a pretty aggressive early play after leading Meowstic, and Delphox went for the Terra Psychic immediately. Ended up kind of backfiring because Primarina just outsped it and was clicking really strong hyper voices from that liquid voice boost. And in the end, Regieleki just ended up being faster, with even though it was a physical set. It seems by the fact that it has wild charge, both mons were chipped down enough to where Aleki could finish off both of the Psy spammers with Electro Web, and then in the end game, Focus Sash Heracross ended up being kind of clutch because it lived with the Focus Sash against the Gardevoir, and then was able to kill it with a combination of Close Combat and Mega Horn. Actually, in game one, funny enough, we found out that Upper Hand does not work versus prankster moves that are not crossing the field, I think. So M-Boss went for Upper Hand into Meowstic and turn 1 of game 1, and it did not stop the Meowstic from getting the Psychic Terrain up, which was something that was worth noting. So after getting adjusted to, Otto had to adjust himself to where he adjusted to bringing the Iron Treads instead of the Roaring Moon instead of the Psy Spam mode, just kind of adjusted to bringing that fantasy core of Gardevoir Treads and Roaring Moon, and the Electric Terra and Supercell Slam ended up doing pretty meaningful damage to Corviknight, even to the Regieleki, did like almost 50% to it. So that was really cool tech. And in the end, Choice Specs boosted, Thunderbolt was able to kill Terra Water Excalibur, able to kill Corviknight. So overall, Otto played that one really well, had a really nice adjustment. And yeah, the Psy Spam stuff with the triple Psychic type was really good.
Yeah, I think both coaches adjusted well. The Upper Hand was unfortunate game 1, but I did really like M-Boss's adjustment for game 2, and then auto swapping from the Psy Spam mode to sort of the aggressive good mon mode. I think was a very nice call for him as well. But moving on to our next game, we have you versus Pedons. Now, if I remember correctly, game 1, you had a lot of good RNG in your favor.
No.
I believe he got a paralysis off of a raw Thunderbolt at one point. That full parried Rillaboom twice was the big thing. But the Latios getting the Calm Mind and the Grassy Seed boost, just sort of both games, was just an absolute tank to try to remove from the field. And then Skeledirge really put in the work with that sort of Torch Song Earth Power combo both games, and Rillaboom, once it finally was able to hit the Wood Hammer into the Oranguru, was able to put in some meaningful damage. That Oranguru was taking a lot of hits though. This is your game, so I don't want to force you to talk too much about your decision-making process, but I think there was a point towards the end of game 2 where you almost were left with just the Comfey, and that made me pretty nervous for you. What was the thought process around that turn where I believe it was the Archaludon in front of, was it Comfey and Latios, and if he targeted into the Latios, or no, into the Skeledirge, if I'm remembering, he might have been able to take it down and you'd just be left with the Comfey. It seemed like that might have been a bit of a scary moment, or were you pretty confident in that turn?
So yeah, that was in game one. And so the reason I was even in that position is because his Vikavolt crit through my 2 special defense boosts on Latios after the second Instruct, which was a little bit annoying. But yeah, it was Dirge and Comfey left, and I knew that the Archaludon had the Mirror Coat, so that was kind of stressful. But I was running some calcs in the middle of the game and was like, okay, so +2 Earth Power probably doesn't kill most Archaludon, like most AV Archaludon variants. Like, I can't really do too much, and so a play I considered was, I was at +2 at that point from having used Torch Song. I was like, okay, a play I could make is go for Torch Song into my own Comfey so that I get to +3, which has a really good chance of killing with Earth Power. But after having looked at the calc, looking at how much +2 Torch Song was doing, it was doing just a little bit over 50% to most AV Archaludons. It's like, well, Skeledirge has a much higher HP stat than Archaludon does, and I have a lot of investment. So Mirror Coat should never kill me at full HP. So I was like, okay, I'm just gonna make sure Dirge is at full HP, click Torch Song so I can get to +3, and then no matter what, I should be able to clean up the end game. And he didn't even end up going for the mirror coat, which made my life a whole lot easier. But after after that, seeing how much Archuludon Ironhead did to my Comfey, it didn't even really do that much. So I'm pretty confident that even if Dirge had died there, that Comfey would have been able to 1v1 that with how much Draining Kiss was doing. But we'll never have to live out that hypothetical because it didn't happen. But yeah, it was just a little bit stressful, and I was a little annoyed with how I was put in that position to begin with.
Yeah, there was a decent amount of RNG, and on Pedon's side, he had some really cool techs on his Riolu. I think the circle throw to throw out your Latios after it got +1 defense, special attack, and special defense turn 1 in game 2 was a really interesting tech. And the Mirror Coat Archaludon, I would not have been prepping for that, so that could have definitely caught something. I think you avoided some of the worst of what could have come out of that, but it looks really good into a lot of what you brought. But overall, I do think you were able to overcome some adversarial RNG that set and pull that one out pretty decently. But up next, we've got Wakeman versus El Flamingo. So this is one man's descent into madness. So this set was pretty interesting. The big moment, of course, came when El Flamingo had a Scrafty on the field, and it is Terra Poison. Wakeman had his Choice Band Urshifu, and then with full confidence, like not even thinking about it, Wakeman goes for the Wicked Blow into the Scrafty instead of a close combat, calling the Terra. The Terra happens, and that just sort of tilted Wade out of this world just a little bit. It was still a very interesting set with a lot of back and forth. The AV Suicune was living a lot. The Poltergeist, I'm going to let you talk about that when it comes up, because I know you had some words about Poltergeist during the Power Rankings video, but the Poltergeist actually did something. And the Araquanid, of course, just deals substantial amount of damage, but I think that call, just psychologically for Wakeman, I think he called it the beanbag mentality was that call, and that really just put him over the top, where it just really tilted El Flamingo during that game as well. But do you have any additional thoughts on this game?
Yeah, I mean, Flamingo, I think, because that was in game 1, and Flamingo ended up winning game 2, despite having lost his Scrafty to, like, kind of a nonsense crit. It was like, okay, like, he lost his big setup piece, which was set up to perfectly win the game, which I completely understand that pain, but he actually pulled it back pretty well and won the game 2. And I genuinely think that Flamingo would have won game 3 if he had gone for the Terra Fairy on his Iron Moth and went for the Dazzling Gleam into the Urshifu. Like, I think that was like one of the calls he could have considered making, and I definitely think that Dazzling Gleam with the Terra Fairy would have killed, even though it was a speed booster and the Urshifu Terra to Dark. But overall, I think Flamingo did a really good job. He played that set really well, and I was super pleased to see how well Poltergeist ended up doing. He ended up getting a ton of value out of the hospitalities, and even Leaf Storm doing really big damage to the Goldango. I thought was really cool. So just in general, a very fun set to watch.
Yeah, I watched the set from Wakeman's perspective first, and after that crit on the Scrafty, I'm like, oh, this set's over. And then I looked down, and there were 17 minutes left in the video, and I'm like, what the hell happened here?
Set's not over.
What happened here? I considered calling this one the set of the week, just in terms of the entertainment value, and it's definitely one of the two of my favorite sets so far this week. But I gave the set of the week, which is going to be the last one we go over, to a different set that occurred. But up next, we have Batista and Chaos Knight Rider. We got this from Batista's perspective. The Scope Lens Hydreigon with the Focus Energy was a very cool setup option. It let him basically Draco with impunity and then be able to damage despite the minus on his special attack. It reminds me a lot of Reg A, I believe, that Scope Lens Focus Energy Hydreigon was sort of the Dozo Giri counter du jour for a couple months early in Reg A, and that was a pretty nice call from him. The Rotom being able to pick up the KO both on the Mamoswine from full and the Enamorous Tarian from about half, while being able to be AV and have enough speed into it. It was just a very nice, well put together set there that let that Rotom basically do what it wanted to do, and I think that it worked really well next to that Hydreigon to cover the sort of weaknesses that the Hydreigon had, one of which was a Heat Wave miss. But the Rotom just really complemented it well, and I really like the Rock Tomb check on the Hearthflame Ogerpon, because it's a pretty fast Pokemon, and using that for speed control when you've got something like that slower Rotom, and then that Hydreigon, which had a decent amount of bulk invested with the crit set as well. I think the team was really well put together for Batista this week, and I just think he executed his game plan pretty cleanly in both games in this set.
Yeah, I mean, you look at all of the members of Batista's team. He only ended up bringing the Firepon, Washtom, Hydreigon, and Cobalion. But if you look at all of their HP stats, they all have a ton of bulk. So it's like having two really prevalent speed control options with the Rock Tomb on Ogerpon was a good call, and then the Electro Web on the Rotom Wash. Just like lots of value there. I thought he played both games great, and that he had the correct two Mons in the back in both games. The Cobalion and the Rotom being in the back really set him up well for success both games. So ended up just being, despite the quality of that YouTube video, the game was really well played on his behalf. So yeah,
definitely. And I'm sad we didn't get to see the Iron Thorn, because the Rock Blast set with Dragon Dance is actually a really good set. It didn't line up well necessarily into what Chaos Knight Rider brought, although the Rock Blast I think might have been a decent call into the Terra Flying Enamorous. But overall, I think that he showed that he's going to be a tough out this season. Batista, he's been playing really well across the various leagues he's been playing in recently, and I just think that this team was one of the more well put together teams this week in terms of prep for what the opponent could have.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I don't really like Thorns that much, but I could see your point on it, like having the potential to be good.
Yep, and then up next we had Stranger Danger versus Furret. So this set was interesting. Obviously, we have the Choice Scarf Urshifu Rapid Strike, which does pretty well into what Furret brought here, because it's going to outspeed the Noivern. It would outspeed the Fluttermane most of the time if it's not booster speed, and with Terra Water it's going to be able to crit through and kill the Fluttermane even with that amount of HP investment, even assuming solid defense investment. Yeah, you can live Adamant, Choice Scarf, Surging Strikes without a Terra Water, but you can't live with the Terra Water.
Mm-hmm.
And then the Serena to block some of the priority from the Hitmontop, I think really just let Stranger have a pretty decent matchup into controlling a lot of the game, especially when it came to that Iron Jugulus being able to outduel that Noivern when it came to speed control. But I do think that Furret made some decent adjustments as well. I think that Heatran being able to sort of beat that Urshifu late game if it's with the Grass Terra, survive some hits, and then kill back with Earth Power, sort of got him game 2. But I think the game 3 adjustment of going for that Swords Dance Iron Leaves next to Tailwind Noivern, and then not being able to get the Tailwind up in front of the Jugulus with the Sylveon, and the Sylveon just being able to start hyper voicing through, even though it died eventually to the Iron Leaves, that was that was pretty tricky. That was pretty tricky to deal with, I think. I think that this shows just the difference in Tailwind setters between the Jugulus and the Noivern, both in terms of staying power and damage. The Iron Leaves was able to put in some work, but the Volcarona set was also quite good, being a backup Tailwind setter. The Rage Powder, that's obviously a really bulky set. The Rage Powder was able to do some pretty good redirection, and I don't actually think I saw it click overheat, if I'm remembering correctly, but it was just a really, really nice support piece. And a lot of times we see Volcaronas that are almost purely offensive sets, and I really liked the way that this Rage Powder Tailwind set was able to support some of the big hitters on the team, like that Sylveon, Urshifu, and to some extent that Serena as well.
Yeah, Stranger he's a braver man than I am, because there is no world in which you catch me bringing only a fire attack on Volcarona in front of a Heatran, but it really ended up paying off for him. I think that Stranger did a really good job of leveraging the Urshifu, the Fire Water Grass Core in games 1 and 2 of Volcarona. Zarina and Urshifu just did a really good job of sticking damage where he could while making pretty safe plays, not making any super ridiculous reads, just having the correct moves for the matchup and pivoting where it was needed. But then, yeah, like you said, in the game 3, the difference between Jugulus as a tailwind setter and Noivern as a tailwind setter was just completely on display there, because Jugulus came in, completely outclassed the Noivern, was just way more productive, and really just set Stranger up for a nicely played game 3. So just in general, I think that Stranger played the set really well. Game 2 adjustment by Furret was pretty good, despite not getting any value out of the Terra Water on the Noivern. Heatran just really came in and put in a bunch of work. So, yeah, just really impressive stuff from both coaches. But Stranger, I think, just ended up having more useful Mons at the end of the day. So,
Yeah. So I mean, this Volcarona bulk was just absolutely floored me. You don't expect a Volcarona to live a power gem from a Flutter Mane without Terrain, and it did.
yeah,
That's
ate it.
there might not have been a lot of investment in that Flutter Mane, but Volcarona surviving that was rather shocking to me when it happened.
Yeah, very impressive stuff. Very impressive EVs.
But our next game is our game of the week, which I picked Squirrely versus Tay. First thing I want to talk about on Tay's set is the Smeargle didn't come, even though it had the Water Shuriken set for the Annihilate, along with Burning Bulwark as its protecting move. Which,
Yeah,
Smeargle's so silly. It's just a silly Pokemon.
I hate it. I
It,
fucking hate it.
yeah, Spore, Follow Me, Water Shuriken, Burning Bulwark with Moody. This is a great Pokemon. But Squirrely really leaned into the rain mode. The Basculegion with the Assault Vest and the Swift Swim did a lot of damage, and I think he really utilized the Stellar Terra pretty effectively. He had 3 Pokemon running Stellar Terra for bonus damage, and I think it mattered for each of them potentially into this set. The Noctowl, of course, doing so much damage with that Tinted Lens Hurricane, and also having the option to haze away some of the Annihilate buffs, because if it's hazing away the Annihilate buffs and it can't be hit by the Rage Fist, it looks pretty good into a lot of the Annihilate sets. Obviously, this one has Thunder Punch and would still be able to hit it, which looks good into a lot of this team set. But the Basculegion offensive pressure, the Ludicolo with the Encore, I think that Squirrely's team matched up really well into a lot of what Tay was able to put up. Tay didn't really have counter weather for his rain mode, which during the power rankings, I know we talked about there not being as much counter weather in the league, which probably boosted up the team, even though it's very rain focused in both of our minds, because without the counter weather, it's going to be able to sort of have rain with impunity a lot of the time. So I think Squirrely played this really, really well in terms of having an answer for that Annihilate. And obviously the Noctowl was very impressive, and the damage output from that Basculegion, even without the adaptability boost with the Swift Swim boost, with that Terra Stellar and the rain boosted Wave Crash and Aqua Jet, I just think overall this was a very, very cool set. One thing I do want to talk about is that Terra Stellar Terra Blast, which would allow him to hit super effective into whatever Tay ended up tearing. I don't think that ever came out during the set, if I'm remembering correctly, but that I just think is very cool tech when you're looking for a last move on an AV set. But what did you think of this set this week?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, the nickname on Squirrely's Pelipper is Fire.
Yeah.
The UK weather, I think that's really funny. Um, but yeah, so I was really impressed by the Ludicolo. I mean, in game two, Ludicolo kind of single handedly lost Squirrely that game because it missed like three hydro pumps, which was pretty bad. But the fake out plus encore pressure with the rain boost was really strong, and he ended up getting a bunch of value out of encoring Mons into protect. Game one was still pretty scary win for him because he was relying on Hurricane hitting without the rain. So Tay played that one pretty well. Didn't end up getting much value out of Crocodile. Just kind of came in and got muddy watered and died. But
Mm-hmm.
I also really thought that the Kilowatt roll plus Annihilate synergy was cool because the Kilowatt roll can discharge next to Annihilate and give it a +1 proc to its Rage Fist. And if you Terra the Annihilate, then you're taking not very effective damage and are at no risk of being paralyzed. So that's really cool.
Mm-hmm.
That's really cool synergy right there between those two. But yeah, I think Squirrely just did a really good job of utilizing. I think he kind of realized in game two that Thunderous was just not active enough to provide the value that he wanted, even though it could taunt the Tailwind. It just didn't do a whole lot. So bringing back Pelipper for game three was really good call on Squirrely's, and I just think he played it pretty well. Was reliant on some inaccurate moves, but not gonna like knock him for that. Just a braver man than I am. So
Yeah, as long as he doesn't do it in playoffs and then get tilted if he misses a hydro pump or something.
yeah,
Every
exactly.
league I've ever played in where someone misses a hydro pump in playoffs. But yeah, I do think that the Kilowatt roll lining up really well into the Thunderous was kind of funny because he went with the Volt Absorb set, so the Wild Volt Storm just actually does nothing into this entire team.
Yeah,
Which
pretty much.
I thought was pretty cool tech from Tay, and then the Noctowl being able to pick up the Kilowatt roll that had taken just a little bit of chip with a Hurricane. Uh, you don't really expect to see that, but I guess that's what you get when you don't run much bulk on your Kilowatt roll. But yeah, this has been our recap for week one. Thanks again for joining me, Chad. Do you have any closing thoughts before we end the video?
Yeah, I think we should have banned Smeargle.
No, Smeargle didn't even come. Smeargle's a bad Pokemon.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you've been enjoying this season, and we'll be back here next time with week number 2. Have a nice one.